was lost when Alyssa was taken? What was lost with her murder?
My daughter, Willow's mother, everything.
How do you keep Alyssa alive for her daughter, Willow?
Show her pictures. This is your mom. This is your mom. Every Mother's Day, we visit the grave. We take flowers. We take cards. You know, we talk about her all the time. What does this say? Mother of Willow Ann.
I hope that when she learns what happened, she doesn't let it tear her apart.
October 2nd, 2020.
Any crime scene is going to be inside that tape?
It's inside that tape.
All right.
I remember my phone was continuously ringing. And I finally answer it because it's my supervisor, and she's frantic, and she's telling me, you've got to get to Green Tree Apartments.
When I heard that pop, I turned around, I knew it was a gunshot.
And she says, something has happened to Alyssa. What happened to her?
We're gonna start having family members show up here.
I pull up, police, fire trucks, ambulance, everywhere.
She got shot in the car.
Okay.
You can see her handprints.
Who are you?
I'm Detective Harding.
I remember asking that officer, I said, she didn't make it, did she? And he said, no, she didn't. And I just lost it at that point.
When you learned that your sister was dead, did you have a suspect in mind?
I knew immediately it was Andrew Beard. I knew that the only person I could think that would want her dead was Andrew Beard.
She even said, I think he's the kind of person that's gonna try to kill me. And he did. And he did. Oh my God.
It was one of the most brutal scenes that I'd been to in 32 years law enforcement. You could see the rage.
Don't touch anything, okay?
What does it tell you when it's this vicious about the killer?
It's personal.
She apparently has had a history with baby daddy.
Within an hour of getting to the crime scene, we knew that we needed to look for Andrew Beard.
Andrew Beard is the suspect?
Yes.
He cannot get away with this. He cannot get away with this.
At first, this seemed like an open and shut case. But as it turned out, Andrew Beard was only half the story.
In the months after Alyssa Burkett was murdered, she appeared to her mother, Teresa Collard, in a dream.
I see her across the room, and in my dream, I knew she was gone. But I was hysterically happy that I was seeing her, and I was thinking, you're back. She came to me and said, no, I'm not back, and I don't want to come back, and I never want to be there again. I was puzzled. Why don't you want to come back? And she said, because I was always afraid there.
Although 24-year-old Alyssa Burkett had been afraid for months, the attack at this apartment complex where she worked in Carrollton, Texas, north of Dallas, came as a surprise.
So when you arrive here, what do you see?
According to one of the lead detectives, Michael Harding, Alyssa pulled into her usual parking space at around 9 a.m.
Alyssa's car was actually parked right here where this green van is, right here, and the assailant's vehicle had parked right next to her in this spot.
Were you here when everything happened?
Yes, I was sitting at my desk.
Witnesses say the assailant exited his vehicle, a black Ford Expedition SUV with a gun in his hand.
She had the window up, and he shot right through the window.
Maintenance supervisor Darren Eichler, about 15 feet away,
it's horrible.
Heard the gun blast and turned around.
What do you see?
I see a black SUV starting to back out of the parking spot.
Investigators believe the shooter thought Alyssa was dead. The blast had destroyed her left eye and part of her face. But Alyssa Burkett was still alive.
She gets out of her car, and she walks up to this landing to try to get help because she knows her coworkers are here.
The shooter, described by some as a black man, got out of the vehicle and began sprinting toward Alyssa, this time with a new weapon in his hand, something more personal, a large hunting knife.
Did you see him holding the knife?
Yeah, in the hand.
After he starts to stab her, she's still fighting. On this window right here, there was a blood handprint smear where Alyssa was trying to get anyone to come out and help her.
But fearing it was an active shooter situation, they stayed inside.
We're just getting our day started.
Okay.
And the attacker launched into a rabid killing frenzy, plunging his knife into flesh and bone again and again. Incredibly, Alyssa was still breathing when her assailant fled.
Once the suspect left, her coworkers came out to try to render aid.
One of her colleagues made this call to 911.
911, what is the address of the emergency?
Someone came up and just shot my assistant manager.
Where is the shooter?
I don't have enough information. He's gone. He left in his car. He literally left a second ago.
Fire department pulled up first. They come up. I get out of the way and let them do their thing. And
They start working on her right here?
You know where she was hit?
Immediately, yeah. And it was too late. She was gone.
Alyssa had been stabbed and slashed a total of 44 times. Alyssa's mother, Teresa, immediately gave the police a name, and it wasn't a black man. It was Andrew Beard.
I know he did this. He's an evil person.
Teresa told detectives that Andrew Beard and Alyssa were in the throes of an ugly custody battle over their one-year-old daughter, Willow Ann. A battle that began when Alyssa was still pregnant, says her friend, Brandy Reagan.
He initiated by asking her if he could have full custody of the baby after the baby was born.
And what did Alyssa have to say to his idea of him getting full custody?
You better be effing kidding me.
Alyssa and Andrew were worlds apart from the beginning. He was almost 9 years older, established with a good job at a tool company, a nice house, even had a plane. She was 22, loved eating turkey legs at state fairs, and was still figuring life out. After meeting on a dating app, they had a fling, nothing serious. But then she found out she was pregnant, says her friend and roommate, Shelby Wright.
I'll never forget, she's just standing there, hysterically crying and upset. She couldn't even speak, and she hands me a pregnancy test that said positive. And I honestly had no words for her.
But as the pregnancy progressed, Alyssa's fears turned to excitement, says Shelby, especially when she learned it was a girl. On July 23, 2019, Alyssa gave birth to a baby girl she named Willow.
And when you saw them together, Alyssa and Willow, what was that experience like?
Amazing. Motherhood looked great on her.
Yes. Just looking at the two of them, you could tell that their relationship was, everything.
I always love how she's looking at her in this picture.
Madison Grimes is Alyssa's younger sister.
Willow clung to her every second of every day, and I think that tells you a lot about the mother Alyssa was.
Alyssa went back to college and got a good job as an assistant property manager.
I think everything she did at that point in her life was for Willow. She wanted to be successful for Willow. She didn't want Willow to grow up and struggle. She just wanted Willow to have an easy life.
Andrew, who had joint custody, had Willow a few days every week, but he kept pushing for primary custody, dragging Alyssa in and out of court hearings, emptying her bank account.
She was terrified. Willow at this point was the most important thing in her life, and when she, looked at the bigger picture, Andrew, he made more money than her. He had a house, he had all of the nice things that she didn't have, so she was afraid that, he wanted Willow and he was gonna get her.
Andrew's mother, Lizette Bowers, says her son was acting out of love, not malice.
My son, Andrew Beard, is a loving, warm individual who always operated from his heart, from his core center. When he had Willow, she was constantly strapped to the front of him. He was reading to her. He wanted her to see the whole world every day. He just felt that he could provide her more stability.
In March 2020, when Willow was 8 months old, things seemed to change for the better. The feuding parents found common ground, finally reaching an agreement on visitation and child support.
And so things seemed to calm down.
Things calmed down, yeah.
But a gathering storm was about to come barreling in.
Carrollton Police Department, search warrant. If you're in there, come out with your hands up.
In the spring of 2020, it looked like the bitter custody battle between Alyssa and Andrew had finally come to an end. Alyssa had a new guy named Ben, and Andrew fell hard for a woman named Holly Elkins, someone his mom, Lizette, was thrilled about.
I adored her from minute one. She just has this charm and energy. I warmed to her very quickly.
Alyssa was happy that he started dating someone else.
I guess hopeful that Holly would help this situation, that Holly would be supportive of the mother that's involved.
Holly sent this text to Alyssa. Look forward to having a super healthy relationship with you and Ben. Alyssa responded, I hope your influence helps, because I'd love nothing more for us all to have a healthy relationship. Despite Holly's message, Andrew suddenly became hostile with Alyssa. He was once again demanding primary custody of Willow, dragging Alyssa back into court.
He was always very short, very rude, very hateful. It just totally changed the way that they communicated together.
Alyssa couldn't shake this uneasy feeling that she was being watched, and began telling family and friends that Andrew always seemed to know what she was doing.
He knew where she was. He knew where Willow was. He knew just other places that she had been.
I remember one night she was out with one of her friends and they were at a bar in downtown Dallas, and she's like, text me, oh my gosh, Andrew is here. And in my mind, I'm like, the odds of that happening are slim to none. She didn't know how he was tracking her. She just knew that she was being tracked.
How would you describe what she went through?
Hell. I mean, every day you feel like you're having to watch over your shoulder. That's how I felt she lived.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alyssa.
Madison found this video after Alyssa's death. It was never posted.
This past year, I have been going through a custody battle, a very ugly one. I have a 1-year-old child. It's taken a toll on my mental and physical health. With that being said, I've become a lot stronger in the process. And I guess just my message is, no matter what you're going through, stick it out, you can do it, and stay strong.
But she would continue to be tested. In September 2020, 1 month before her murder, it reached a whole new level. A man who said his name was Frank Morrow called 911 and reported that Alyssa was selling drugs out of the trunk of her car at work.
I saw what I thought looked like someone just selling some drugs out of their trunk, and I could smell it and I could see it. And
Okay, what kind of vehicle is it?
it's a little Toyota Corolla. I have a license plate, if that helps.
Okay, great. What was your last name?
Morrow.
Acting on this tip, Carrollton police officers descended on the Green Tree Apartments leasing office and confronted Alyssa. She gave them the keys to her car, and they opened the trunk. Inside, they discovered drugs, a pistol, and some cash, exactly where the caller said they would be.
So your daughter suddenly now looks like a drug dealer, and a dangerous one as well. She's armed.
Yes.
I mean, is Alyssa worried that she's going to get arrested, lose her job?
Yes, all of the above. She's worried about her job. She thinks, yeah, she's going to be arrested. Now he's going to use this in court, so she's for sure going to lose Willow.
After questioning Alyssa, it was clear to police that she knew nothing about the drugs and pistol in the trunk of her car. They concluded those items had been planted. The caller had tried to frame her. Alyssa knew in her gut that caller was Andrew Beard. Later that day, she texted her roommate, Shelby.
Alyssa messaged me and said, he is going to try to get someone to kill me next.
And when you read those words?
My heart dropped.
That wasn't who she was. She wasn't a fearful person. Showing and asking for help shows me that she was genuinely scared.
She knew that, whatever was coming next was going to be serious.
The once fearless young woman had become scared for her life. These are some of the texts she sent to her sister Madison. Come over while I walk inside. Lock the door behind you. Do you see anyone around you? And Alyssa wasn't the only one who was terrified.
It kept progressing. Each thing that he would do just kept getting worse. And after this point, framing her and she didn't get arrested, I thought, well, what else is there to do besides kill her?
One month after the drugs and gun were planted in Alyssa Burkett's car, she was dead.
I knew that it was him when the drugs didn't work in the car for him to get the baby.
Once we talked to Alyssa's mom, we had an idea who we were looking for.
And who is that person?
That person was Andrew Beard.
Oh my God.
And to Teresa's horror, he had visitation with Willow that day. The baby was with him.
Yes, I want my grandbaby away from him.
My first thoughts were if he's gonna kill Willow.
Within hours of the murder, the police pulled over Andrew Beard's F-150 pickup truck for an alleged traffic violation. Andrew and his fiancée, Holly Elkins, were asked to get out of the vehicle.
The daughter's in a car seat in the back seat.
Much of the body cam footage in this program has been resized so you can see it better.
They've been pretty cooperative.
Andrew seemed unfazed by the whole thing, says Detective Harding.
He was very calm. He wasn't amped up. He didn't seem nervous.
My part was to just find you. That's all they asked me to do.
Ultimately, Andrew and Holly were allowed to go, and because he had court-mandated visitation rights, take Willow with them. But the police seized his F-150 pickup and instructed him not to return home. Andrew, Holly, and Willow went to a hotel.
You got your garage code.
And that night, a search of Andrew's house turned up critical evidence.
This was found inside the living room in one of Andrew Beard's backpacks.
Such as this envelope, scribbled with incriminating notes.
Upon reading the notes, we realized those were tied to the Frank Morrow 911 call.
Frank Morrow, the caller who had reported Alyssa was selling drugs out of her car.
Alyssa's license plate number, the color and model of the vehicle, Frank Morrow, everything that he needed to make that 911 call was on this back of this
It's like you
envelope.
discovered the screenplay to this phony call to 911.
I was kind of shocked. I was like, he kept this?
So we found this GPS tracker box.
Also in plain view, says another lead detective, Jeremy Chevalier, charging stations and batteries that match the tracking device detectives discovered on Alyssa's car after the murder.
So this is the device that was put on her car. That was all part of his plan to catch her doing something that he believed that she shouldn't be doing, to gain an advantage in that child custody dispute.
A search of that Ford F-150 seized at the traffic stop turned up more jaw-dropping evidence.
So this is one of the makeup vials that were recovered from inside one of the bags in the F-150.
It was a foundation called Java.
Yeah. It's really dark.
Very dark. And the purpose of that was what, do you believe?
Was to disguise Andrew Beard's face, to make him look like an African-American.
The police found the knife sheath at the scene, but never found the knife or the gun. But the day after the homicide, they found something just as important, that black SUV. They learned Andrew had bought it specifically to commit the murder. And there it was, abandoned less than a mile from Andrew's house.
He drove it to that location, and he fled back to his house the morning of the murder.
That's Andrew Beard, captured on a home security camera, fleeing through the neighborhood.
He is doing the Bigfoot run from this vehicle.
What'd you find when you guys processed the inside of this vehicle?
We were able to recover multiple spots where blood was recovered. That was later tested to be Alyssa's blood.
They also found another part of his disguise, a fake beard. That looks like a Halloween kind of beard. Just
Exactly, yes.
Really
He purchased a Halloween costume.
So that's what led us to get the arrest warrant for Andrew Beard.
Andrew Beard, who still had Willow, had been staying in an Airbnb with his fiancée Holly Elkins and mother Lizette.
When we were at the Airbnb, he got a call. He was going to be arrested.
Just 3 days after Alyssa was killed, Willow was sent back to Teresa. And Andrew Beard turned himself in to the police.
Andrew Beard, over here.
He was charged with murder.
I was confident they had the wrong man.
So was Holly Elkins. She volunteered to speak to the police.
I want to help, I really do, but I don't have any answers.
Incredulous that the man she planned to marry was capable of murder.
So I just told all my friends and family that I'm engaged to the most wonderful man on the planet. Yeah. And now people want me to believe that he's not that.
And there are so many emotional roadblocks for you to try to believe that. I get that.
I can't believe that my fiance would do something like that to a woman or to anybody, but a woman.
Detective Chevalier on the right and Detective Harding on the left interviewed Holly for about an hour, hoping to turn her into a witness for the prosecution.
I'm telling you, there's a side of him that you do not know.
But she stood by Andrew, insisting that he had an alibi. He was home with her when the murder took place.
There are a few hours that you know he was not in that house.
You cannot tell me that I feel that way, sir.
I can tell you that because I know that for a fact that he was out of the house, Holly.
I don't know that for a fact. That's what my problem is.
Holly remained adamant that she would have known if he had left.
I am a total stage 5 clinger girlfriend. I'm always up his ass. I find it hard to believe.
The interview ended with Holly standing by her man. She and Andrew's mom, Lizette, continued living together in an Airbnb. They became extremely close and bonded over their shared belief that Andrew was innocent, says Lizette.
We stayed so close, we were just connected at the hip and made agreements to never go anywhere without one another.
Finally, after 2 weeks behind bars, Andrew was released on bond. Lizette was overjoyed. Holly, as Lizette would soon discover, not so much.
They've told us he's coming home tomorrow, and Holly says, I'm going. She's holding her suitcase, and she goes, I'm going, I'm leaving. I'm going home. But the day before Andrew gets home, why are you choosing now? during this scary, scary time in his life. She'd already ordered her Uber and never came back.
Detective Chevalier says he was so worried about Willow's safety, he reached out to the federal government to take the case under federal firearm laws. Because an unregistered silencer was found in Andrew's home, the feds agreed. Andrew Beard was rearrested 8 days after he bonded out.
Ultimately, at that point, our goal was to get him back into custody.
Andrew was ultimately charged with cyber-stalking using a dangerous weapon resulting in death. 1 year and 8 months after Alyssa's murder, Andrew called his mother with unimaginable news.
He said, Mom, I'm going to plead guilty. So I immediately said, well, Andrew, you're not going to plead guilty to anything you didn't do, because clearly he didn't murder her, in my mind, because that's out of character and not who he is, and it was stupidly done, and he's not stupid. So it never was him.
But she would learn it was him. He admitted he did it. He killed the mother of his child.
I have physically dropped to my knees sometimes, feeling like I've gotten punched in the stomach. And I have to tell myself that that was a moment, a heinous, awful, out of character, broken moment.
Andrew Beard pleaded guilty, but the investigation wasn't over. Andrew Beard was talking, and he had a lot to say.
How come you waited so long to talk about what Holly did?
What do you make of Holly Elkin's interview with detectives? See more evidence from the case at 48hours.com.
Holly Elkins left Texas and returned to her home state of Michigan 2.5 weeks after the murder of Alyssa Burkett. She gave no hint of what she'd left behind, says her best friend from childhood, Stephanie Goddard.
Did she ever mention the name Alyssa Burkett to you?
Never.
Never?
Never.
Not once? She didn't talk about Andrew Beard either?
Not even once. Nope.
Stephanie, who met up with Holly about 7 months after she returned to Michigan, says her old friend appeared to be starting life anew. A new condo, a new Lexus, a new man.
She had this boyfriend with her, so everything just seemed really normal.
Stephanie says from the time she was a teenager, Holly always had a guy, and she knew how to wrap them around her little finger.
It was like a cat and mouse thing.
When you say cat and mouse, she was the cat.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, she was the cat.
She controlled the relationship.
Absolutely. She was the one in the driver's seat.
Back in Texas, investigators were just beginning to learn more about the fiancé who had skipped town after the murder. 1 year and 9 months after Alyssa was killed, Andrew Beard spoke to the FBI as part of a plea deal.
I'm assuming absolutely it does look planned out, because it was. The process was planned out.
It quickly became clear to investigators that this Holly Elkins,
I'm trying to help, and no one's helping me.
the Holly Elkins seemingly torn apart by Alyssa's death,
I just feel bad to not help something that I think is very sad that happened.
was giving the performance of her life.
I've literally cried myself to nauseam every single night over this.
What did you learn about her true feelings about Alyssa?
She hated Alyssa with a burning passion.
Investigators dug back into Andrew and Holly's text messages, many of which Alyssa's family also saw.
Both of you learned that Holly had some derogatory words about Alyssa. What did she call her?
Ugly, fat, a bad mom, all things that she wasn't. And baby mama was my sister's contact name in Holly's phone.
C baby mama, derogatory word that any woman finds despicable. What the heck's all that?
Jealousy.
Holly wanted something Alyssa had, and she didn't, says Madison.
She wanted Willow.
Why was she so obsessed with Willow?
That was her life. She wanted a perfect family, and that was her way of getting it. Alyssa was going to stand in her way of doing that.
If it was Friday, Holly would have been with me. If it was Friday.
The more Andrew talked, the clearer Holly's role became, says Detective Chevalier.
What portrait did he paint of Holly Elkins?
That she was the one running the show, that she was telling him what he was going to do, when he was going to do it, how he was going to do it.
Remember that drug plant?
If you were to ask me whose idea was what, drugs and the planting of drugs was Elkins.
Holly Elkins even tried to get Alyssa's mom, Teresa, arrested. The incident started when Teresa and Alyssa drove by Holly and Andrew's home. Teresa says Holly and Andrew had failed to return Willow at the appointed time.
We see Holly on the golf cart with Willow in her lap coming towards the end of their driveway. And I got out of the car and I grabbed Willow, went and got back in the car, handed Willow to Alyssa, and sped off.
Holly immediately called the police, who arrived with body cams rolling.
And the grandmother.
Holly told them Teresa assaulted her when she grabbed Willow from her lap.
She literally attacked me from behind side. I was facing the lake.
Teresa says she never touched Holly, but Holly pulled up her shirt to show cops scratches she claimed Teresa had inflicted.
I have a
No. Oh, you have some on your stomach?
What did you think of those pictures?
That they were ridiculous, that it was so apparent that she had done that to herself.
How would they even think someone else did that to her? Because they're going downwards, like your own hand did it.
The police agreed, concluding the injuries looked like they were self-inflicted. But it only made things more dangerous for Alyssa, says Detective Chevalier.
The things that they were doing to try to get custody of Willow wasn't working at that point. And I think that they decided we got to up the game. And upping the game meant getting rid of Alyssa.
Holly began playing her game of cat and mouse.
It was made very clear to me that your previous methods aren't working. This is what you're going to do now in order to prove that that you're worthy.
Worthy of being a man who deserved her love.
Holly Elkins writes to Andrew, I don't want anyone who is to some low life or a pushover. I want a man who protects his women and child before anyone and doesn't give two Fs otherwise. Your comment?
Just straightforward manipulation. She was going to make him do what she felt needed to be done, no matter what.
And Andrew told investigators it worked.
Like, I was emotionally drained, and at that point, I just basically said, okay, and became submissive to whatever she wanted me to do. That's the task I did.
A week and a half before the murder, Holly left for Mexico, but didn't let up on Andrew.
Here's a text. This is 1 week before the murders. This is September 25th, 2020. Holly Elkins writes, I hope you handle it. I'm not coming home to BS. Andrew Beard says, that's my goal.
To that, Holly texted back,
well, it will be a whole different conversation if I feel like you are ride or die. If not, then I don't know. What is she saying to him?
To me, it means that you're either with me or you're not with me. You're either going to ride with me and die with me, or you're not going to be with me at all.
After he killed Alyssa, Andrew told investigators Holly begged for details about the crime.
Her request was that he described the murder to her while they were in bed together.
It's one of the most degrading things I've ever heard.
In May of 2023, Andrew Beard was sentenced to 43 years in federal prison. Investigators believe Holly Elkins thought the case was over.
I think she believed that the further she got away from this, the less involved she was going to be. But it didn't work out for her.
These are the photos of the grave. We always decorated for every holiday.
In July of 2023,
Valentine's Day, and then Christmas.
Almost 3 years after Alyssa's death,
Happy Mother's Day.
Holly Elkins was arrested by federal agents at the Miami airport as she was returning from a trip to the Dominican Republic.
The lanterns. That was, I think, one of my favorite things that we did.
An arrest a long time coming for Alyssa's family.
What is that?
Balloon. I thought we were never going to see that happen. I felt relief.
Holly, who pleaded not guilty, was charged with conspiracy to stalk and stalking using a dangerous weapon, resulting in death. The FBI had built a compelling case against her, says Detective Chevalier.
Holly's phone really had a lot of stuff on it, searching for tracking devices. There were indications that they were together whenever the ammunition and the knife were purchased.
And they also tied Holly to the makeup Andrew used to disguise himself as a black man.
It was, you're going to dress up as a different person, essentially. You're going to wear this dark makeup. That was her plan. That was how it's going to be done.
While Andrew seems harmless in this video, never forget that he was the one who chased Alyssa down like a hunter tracking a wounded animal. He furiously stabbed her with a brutality these detectives had never seen.
Andrew ends up saying about why he came back to finish her. What did he say?
His statement to us during the interview with Agent Hansen was that he did it out of mercy, that he knew that she was still alive and he was somehow doing her a favor by killing her.
Andrew may have committed the murder alone, but according to the U.S. Attorney's Office, he didn't plan it alone. In April 2024, Holly Elkins went on trial as a co-conspirator. In the courtroom, where no cameras were permitted, one of the prosecutors put it like this, says Detective Harding.
Andrew Beard is a monster, but he was Holly Elkins' monster.
I don't want or need a lawyer because I don't have anything to hide.
Yeah.
U.S. attorneys painted a picture of a woman who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted.
Well, I feel like the dumbest, most manipulated woman on the entire planet, if this is true. Yes.
And what she wanted was a little girl named Willow.
And do you believe Holly Elkins was a puppet master in all of this?
100%, I do. She orchestrated this whole thing.
I think Holly is wicked. I think she's wicked to the core, that she would ever want this to happen to another woman, to a mother of the child that she had come to love.
What if these two had never come together, Holly and Andrew? Would Andrew have committed this murder?
I don't think they would have. I 100% believe that if Holly and Andrew had never met, that Alyssa Burkett would be alive today.
After a one-week trial, the case went to the jury.
The jury takes just 90 minutes to deliberate. When they come back to that courtroom, what is the verdict?
Guilty.
Holly was found guilty and sentenced to 2 life terms, much longer than Andrew. For Alyssa's family, the verdict was a bittersweet victory.
I was thrilled but heartbroken at the same time. I'm so happy that Alyssa's getting the justice she deserved, but at that point, it's over. Our fight is over.
2 families are left to grapple with the wreckage Holly Elkins and Andrew Beard left behind. Lizette Bowers will forever be known as the mother of a murderer.
He killed someone, and that is beyond awful. It's the worst thing anyone can do, but that's not who I love.
And Teresa and Madison must try to make sense of a world without Alyssa in it.
We don't get to live the normal life anymore. It was always me and her, my best friend. Like, that was my person. And only getting to be with her for 20 years, that's not, just not fair.
After the trial, Teresa was allowed to take Alyssa's things out of her car.
It was pretty emotional for all of us, actually. This was the mirror that she used so she could see Willow from the driver's seat. You know, just knowing that was the last place she was sitting when it happened.
I want Mama.
Willow, who was with Teresa, had never cried over her mother until that day.
She was crying, asking me if I could please bring her mom back just so she could see her one more time. And I tried to explain to her that she's in heaven. And then she asked me if she had a phone number in heaven.
One day, Willow will learn the whole story of what happened to her mother.
Do you know what this is?
Willow tree.
Yeah.
And when that time comes, her family hopes Willow will see the beauty in Alyssa's life, not the tragedy of her death.
I hope that one day she grows up and she feels the love that her mom sincerely had for her.
You've probably heard of the NCIS from the hit TV series, but we're about to take you inside its real-life work. Listen to 48 Hours NCIS early and ad-free on the 48 Hours Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts.
As a kid growing up in Chicago, there was one horror movie I was too scared to watch. It was called Candyman. But did you know that the movie Candyman was partly inspired by an actual murder? Listen to Candyman, the true story behind the bathroom mirror murder, wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Post-mortem. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Green, and today we are discussing the case of Alyssa Burkett, who in 2020 was brutally murdered by Andrew Beard, her ex-boyfriend, and also the father of her young daughter. Nearly 3 years after Alyssa's death, Andrew's fiancée, Holly Elkins, was arrested in connection with the murder. So joining me now to unpack all the twists and turns of this case are 48 Hours correspondent Peter Van Sant, producer Liza Finley, and Gabby Demirdjian. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Great to be here again, Anne-Marie.
Okay, as per usual, everyone, remember, if you haven't listened to the 48 Hours episode yet, you can find the full audio just below this episode in your podcast feed. Go take a listen and then come back for this conversation. So here we go. Alyssa Burkett was murdered in broad daylight outside of her workplace in Carrollton, Texas. This is just north of Dallas. There were witnesses. And even though Andrew Beard wore a disguise, he was really quickly identified as a suspect and surrendered to authorities just 3 days later. But what I was really surprised by is he picked such a public place to attack her. Do you have any insight into why he would do it there in broad daylight?
Well, first off, it's absolute madness that he did it where he did it. His own mother even said this was stupid. She wasn't involved in the murder, of course, but to have all those eyeballs there where he was spotted, his getaway vehicle was spotted, how he killed her was seen. Authorities think it's all part of this enormous psychological pressure he was under from Holly, that he had to act. That's the power that she had over him, that he would have done something this stupid, which put authorities right on top of him so quickly. And by the way, quick side, I used to live in Carrollton, Texas, when I was a reporter in Dallas, and about a mile and a half from this site. So it's really something. Carrollton's a great town, and I loved living there. And this is an extraordinary case for those folks.
It was unbelievable. I mean, just to go back to how stupid it was, for instance, they made up this decision to have him appear, he's a white man, as an African-American man.
Yep.
So they got this makeup, sort of the Java makeup, and he put this on like it was ridiculous. And then he put on a fake beard that was a Halloween costume. And he expected people to think that he was an African-American man. And a lot of the witnesses said, something about him. I don't think he was.
Really?
And yeah. And he wasn't fooling anybody. was ludicrous. And you do wonder, I mean, one of the things we think about all the time is like, how did he think that he was going to get away with this?
Yeah.
There's no way. I mean, he had a history with this woman of tormenting her and stalking her. And here he is in the 9 o'clock in the morning doing this savage murder.
Mm-hmm. You know, the thing about Andrew is that he was really willing to talk pretty openly with the FBI almost right away. Did you all reach out to him?
Yeah, so I had originally sent him an email. He's in prison, but there is a system where you can contact incarcerated people through, and that's how I was able to get my message to him. And so I'd sent him an email, and I said, hey, would you be willing to speak with me over the phone? And he was. He was very polite, answered all of my questions, and he was very willing to help, and he wanted to do an interview on camera. And he was trying to facilitate this with the prison. Ultimately, they didn't let us in there.
Wow.
But he wanted to talk on camera. He was ready.
Did he express regret?
Not to me.
And I always find some people, they just want to talk because they also realize we're the last gasp of the real world from the horrible confinement in prison. And we're a relief to them. They sometimes seize on that and they want to talk to us because after that, it's just bars, horrible food, violence, isolation, shame.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Of course, part of the reason that he was a suspect sort of early on is because Alyssa and Beard had this contentious relationship, this custody battle over their daughter, Willow. But when Beard started dating Holly Elkins, Alyssa was actually hopeful that maybe this new woman would create sort of a new, more positive environment, that all three of them could maybe work together to support Willow. And there were a series of text messages that we actually did see in the hour between Alyssa and Elkins from this period, and they seemed quite amicable. And then something changed drastically between the two of them. Do we know why?
Holly Elkins was just acting, and she says they met for the first time. They all had a meal together, and they were very friendly. And she wrote texts to Alyssa that said, I really want a super healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And Alyssa's like, yes, thank goodness. And her mother was happy, and her sister was happy, and finally, somebody that's going to be able to calm Andrew down. But behind the scenes, let me tell you, behind the scenes, she was up to no good.
Talk about, sort of a two-faced personality.
Yeah.
Alyssa had no idea she had these evil designs to eliminate her and become Willow's mother. We have some other texts that didn't make it into the show. And this is an exchange about what Andrew was going through with Holly, how she put pressure on him. And the murder took place in October of 2020. This is in June. And Holly is texting Andrew, and she says some nasty things about Alyssa. She refers to her as BM, which is a baby mama. Here's some of that exchange. Holly writes, outside of not wanting some garbage mom pathetic hookup in my life, if I raise Willow with you and we don't work out, I lose a child. Do you get that? She's talking now to Andrew, the man she's manipulating to do this killing. Andrew said, I do. It would be unbearable. He was just so submissive to her, right? Then Holly writes, if those things were important to you, you would have brought them up to baby mama on your own, Andrew. And Andrew writes back in his submissive style, I love how serious you were taking it and was just so wrapped up and how great it's been. I didn't give you any acknowledgement of that. And Holly writes back, but you chose to be IDK, I don't know, for lack of a better term, submissive to her. Like, let me deal with some crazy ass courts baby mama situation for the rest of my life to raise Willow, who I have no right to, and I lose if anything goes sideways. This was part of her badgering of Andrew. You're not a man unless you do this. You are to stand up and defend me. These are my desires, my wants. And he is very submissive.
But what's sort of interesting is we spoke to Holly's best friend growing up and in high school. And this is exactly how she treated boys growing up. She was the catch of the day. You know, everybody wanted Holly, all the guys. She had the fanciest clothes and the nicest pocketbooks, and she wound them around her little finger and got them to do things for her, like pick her up at midnight and take her to get a hamburger. Yeah, she had it down.
Gabby, in your correspondence with Andrew Beard, did he talk about how he felt about Elkins?
No.
Really?
But he would refer to her as Elkins. And I thought that was interesting. And he does that in his interview with the FBI. And he refers to Alyssa as Burkett as well, which I thought is kind of cold.
Yeah, that's a little odd. We saw in the hour that they had done this whole fake drug bust scheme to try and get Alyssa, arrested. Maybe she would lose custody. But that wasn't the only thing they tried.
Andrew Beard said Holly was behind a lot of these schemes. She called 911 claiming to be a woman named Amber, for instance, and she wanted to report that there's a car that matched Alyssa's car with the same license plate, driving recklessly, flying drunk, and she was afraid. Holly was afraid, and they went and checked it out, and they didn't find any evidence that Alyssa was even on the road that night.
And remember, they'd put a tracker on her car. We talked about this, where she'd be out at a club and Andrew would walk in. It was like, how did he know I was here? She had no idea that this incredible plot was unfolding where she was the target.
And it was escalating. So I have to admit, Elkins' interview video that we saw, I fell for it. She looked truly distressed. She voluntarily speaks to police. She tells them that she knows nothing about Alyssa's murder. Some of the interview was in the hour, but we're going to actually play a clip that was not included in the hour.
Like, I know what it's like to lose a mom. Anybody losing a mom is not okay with me by any means. And I don't care if I liked her, disliked her, or thought anything about her, because that is not okay. I didn't always have the best relationship with my mom either, but losing a mom is not okay.
So one of the things I thought was interesting about what she says is, I know what it's like to lose a mother. I would never do anything like that. Did she lose her mother?
Yes. So about 2 months before she met Andrew Beard, she lost her mother to suicide. It's very clear in this interview. She's trying to play on the sympathies of these cops. She wants them to feel badly for her. And knowing what we know now, it's honestly crazy that she had come up with a plan to kill Willow's mother, a baby that she'd come to love so much.
Absolutely.
Knowing that she had also lost her mother so recently.
She was masterful in that, I thought. The acting performance.
Right?
She could be nominated for an Oscar. Absolutely convincing.
One of the things the cops told us that she always thought she was the smartest person in the room. She thought she could outsmart everybody.
Welcome back, everyone. So Elkins was actually arrested nearly 3 years after Alyssa's murder. What was she doing during that time?
So we don't know much, but according to court documents, we learned that she had gotten married in February of 2023. We don't know to who, but she had also made 12 trips to the Dominican Republic. So she was keeping busy.
She's living large. Andrew was in the rearview mirror, left behind to deal with this situation she had helped create for him.
And she was obviously not afraid of getting caught. I mean, this was an opportunity for her to go disappear somewhere in a remote region of the world and get away with murder. But I guess she didn't think she had anything to fear.
So what evidence did the FBI uncover that really pointed to Elkins' involvement in Alyssa's murder? Because as you point out, Liza, she was probably feeling like, well, I didn't do it. I don't know. Maybe she was thinking it's not illegal to bring up an idea.
Right. Well, they had all these very damning texts, but they also had some real evidence that really put her smack in the middle of the plot. They found that she had bought that makeup, that dark makeup, and ordered him, according to his FBI interview, to wear it and to be this persona. She was there when they bought the knife, when they brought the ammunition. I mean, really tangible stuff, you know.
48 Hours viewers know this. Every modern car has a GPS tracker. Authorities can see where you went on particular days. And if your car went to a Walmart parking lot, they can then check that day on the cameras. If you use your credit card anywhere, they're going to find that purchase. And so they are able to trip them up on all of these things.
And another thing is that there was evidence that Holly was with Andrew when he placed the GPS tracker on Alyssa's car in June of 2020.
Interesting.
And there was one search on her phone that said creepy stalking music.
And another search, something to the effect of, is it legal to track somebody?
After the murder, she did some searches and she wrote, "Can I not be brought into court if I have a psychiatrist note?" She also wrote, vulnerable patients going to court. She's looking into apparently mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And she also wrote, "Contact psychiatrist in Dallas," suggesting she was mentally troubled with a bunch of question marks.
What was that about?
Prosecutors thought that Holly was trying to create a narrative about herself, potentially for her own defense. So she was thinking of a way that she might be able to, I'm guessing, put the blame on Andrew, that I was mentally damaged or mentally ill at the time, and he manipulated me.
Right.
That's just a theory. I have no idea, but that's a theory.
And also what's so weird is that if it was so obvious that Andrew did this and he was going to get caught for doing it, she would never get Willow, and she knew that. So really, what was the game? What was it?
So the 48 Hours team was actually in the courtroom for Elkin's trial. This is April of 2024. What was it like in the courtroom?
So it was very sad. Andrew had pled, so he never got to go to trial. So this is the first and only trial that Alyssa's family was ever going to attend. And it was almost 4 years later after the murder. So they have to relive this whole thing with the anticipation leading up to it. The prosecution played Holly's interview in court as well. And, you know, it's very evident in some places where she's just overacting and lying. And, you know, knowing what we knew sitting in the courtroom, it was very intense being in there.
So you're in the courtroom and you're hearing all this evidence, crazy evidence about the makeup. What did you learn?
So her defense put on a makeup artist as their expert. And they used the same bottle of makeup that was found in Andrew Beard's car that investigators say he used to cover his face the morning of the murder. They took that bottle of makeup and they essentially did a makeover on Holly Elkins in front of the jury, a demonstration to show that this makeup could be used to contour her face. It took about 20 minutes. The jury is looking at each other like, what is going on?
Right.
Everybody in the room is like, are they really just like giving Holly Elkins a makeover at her own trial? And the judge says something to the effect of like, I've been a judge for a very long time. This is definitely a first.
What was her demeanor like in the courtroom?
She very rarely throughout this 7-day trial looked back into the gallery to see everybody.
Do you know if there was anyone there on her behalf?
There was a couple there. I didn't know if they were related to her, but like we said, she lost her mother, and her dad did show up the very last day, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah. Andrew's mom also attended Holly's trial, and she was sitting in the same section with the victim's family, and the judge actually ordered her to sit on the opposite end, away from Alyssa's family.
Yikes.
And Lizette, Andrew's mom, said to the judge, well, I'm not here in favor of the defense, making it very clear what her position was.
Yeah. This is something that I think was kind of unique. Andrew's mother was not defending her son. I mean, she acknowledged that he did this horrible thing. She is heartbroken about it. Was it difficult to convince her to talk, Lizette? Did she want to talk?
She wanted to talk. She needed to talk.
Sitting across from her, this was a very cathartic moment for her. She did want to communicate that my son had been a normal boy. He had dreams and I loved him. And I never saw this kind of behavior before. And people think too, well, a personality like Andrew must have come from a bad seed somehow. I think she also wanted the world to know I'm a normal person, which makes this ever more haunting of how this can happen. And looking in the depths of the human psyche, how her son could go from this terrific young man to a killer. And she just wanted to talk about it.
I mean, she feels very tainted. You know, she feels that people look at her with disgust and blame her. And she wanted us to know that she was a loving mother who had raised a good son in her mind.
Mm-hmm.
We meet a lot of families of people who commit murder. Very rarely do they admit that their loved one actually did it and take responsibility and feel terrible. And most of them, they just can't go there. They just can't. And she did, you know, I admire that.
I wondered also about, did she talk about her relationship with Holly Elkins? Because I thought it was interesting, that little part of the interview where she's talking about how close they are. And she says, we vowed that we would never go any place without each other. And that actually made me think, like, but that's not normal. Like, that's a different kind of attachment, you know?
Well, they bonded over their belief, or Lizette thought that Holly believed it as well, that Andrew was innocent. So they had a really, you know, they had a cause.
Right. Us against the world.
Yeah.
Lizette, you almost felt like she'd gone back in time and she was the same age, like they were dear friends.
Wow.
And that was a fascinating dynamic. But it's part of Holly's ability to manipulate. For Lizette, she felt as though Holly was a member of the family and she came to love her. Then Holly abandons Andrew and Lizette never hears from her again.
Right. The minute he gets out on bond, she just disappears.
The charge I thought was interesting because Elkins is ultimately found guilty of conspiracy to stalk and stalking using a dangerous weapon resulting in death. But then she gets 2 life sentences. It just didn't seem like those charges would result in such a heavy penalty.
Most murder cases are handled on the state and county level. On the federal side, they do have a murder charge, but it's rarely used. They use these other charges that sound convoluted, but they still pack a wallop in terms of a sentence, and you can be sentenced to life as a result of that charge.
And she got 2 life sentences.
I know. What about Willow? How is she doing?
Willow is 5 years old now. And Alyssa's mother, Teresa, said she's a very loved little girl. It's very clear that they've made a lovely home for her. She has this beautiful princess bedroom, all pink. And I think, you know, now that she's growing up, Teresa is worried about how she's going to have to explain what happened to Alyssa to her.
Remember, Willow asks her grandmother, does Mama have a cell phone in heaven? Can I call her?
Yes.
It's heartbreaking. I can't imagine, right? Who can imagine that? I have to say, Alyssa's mom, though, is just the most loving person. And so she'll be surrounded in that. And hopefully she can come through the other side of this disaster.
Well, it sounds like she has an incredible support system. But this is something that will hang over her for the rest of her life. It was a really fascinating hour, an incredible twist at the end. Peter, Liza, Gabby, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us, Anne-Marie.
Another fascinating talk. Thanks so much.
If you like this series, Postmortem, please rate and review 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts and follow 48 Hours wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also listen ad-free on Amazon Music, Wondery Plus, and the Wondery app, or with a 48 Hours Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof like Aloe, Allbirds, or Skims, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet and the not-so-secret secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell whenever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout experience as business powerhouses like Aloe, Allbirds, and Skims. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Odyssey podcast, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast.